Welcome to How AI-Driven Efficiency is Transforming Business, a roundtable panel discussion brought to you by the IT Executives Council. My name is Neil Brown, CEO of Executive Councils, including the IT Executives Council, Controllers Council, Chief Executives Council, and the Operations Council. Here's our agenda for today. Some brief housekeeping. I'll introduce our sponsor and our panelists. Then we'll get right to our panel discussion, along with some audience polling questions to get your input. Then a very interesting demo on Amazon Q Business. And next, we'll have Q&A at the end of the presentation, so use your GoToWebinar control panel to ask our experts questions. And finally, you'll get a link to this presentation in 24 hours via email from GoToWebinar, so no need for notes or screenshots. So with that, I'm very happy to introduce our partner and sponsor, VAST, a leading provider of IT services and cloud management solutions to companies and organizations across the United States. VAST services help businesses reduce costs and simplify management of their evolving on-premise, hybrid, and multi-cloud environments. VAST is a provider of solutions and services for leading public and private cloud platforms, enterprise storage, infrastructure, and data management technologies. Learn more at vastitservices.com. And with that, I'm very pleased to introduce our panelists, Robert Swanson, OJ Laus, and Brandon Timmons. Robert Swanson is president of VAST, a 22-year IT industry veteran. Bob has held key roles at VAST across sales and technical services, providing him with a well-rounded perspective on delivering value to clients. As president for the past 4 years, Bob manages all company day-to-day operations, including technical services delivery, sales, marketing, and field operations. Octavio, better known as OJ Laus, is director, AI Labs at Armanino, a top 20 accounting firm, where our board chair, Lindy Antonelli, is a partner. OJ is a frequent speaker on AI topics and a contributor to academic publications and news outlets, including Fox Business. OJ earned a JD from UCLA School of Law and resides in Chicago. And Brandon Timmons is a cloud solutions architect with 8+ years of AWS experience, specializing in secure, scalable, and cost-effective cloud solutions. At VAST, he leads cloud strategy and migrations with a focus on services like EC2, RDS, S3, and advanced networking. He holds the AWS Solutions Architect Professional Certification and is actively helping organizations drive innovation with AI and Amazon Q. Welcome to our panelists.
Thank you, Neil.
So let's get right into our roundtable. But before we do, let's do our first poll so we get that that audience input. Let me cue that up and launch it. Are you currently utilizing any AI tools? Select one of the following. So please take a few moments to answer this poll. All answers are confidential and anonymous. And you'll also be able to benchmark your peers here. So we've got some fast voting going on here. Got some smart people in the audience here. Just a couple more seconds. And let's take a look at the results. So utilizing AI tools, 56% only use ChatGPT or other conversational AI tools. So that's number one, followed by Microsoft 365 Copilot, 32%, and then 8% none, 4% AI tools provided natively in my other business applications. So Bob, OJ, any surprises here?
No surprises on my part. I mean, ChatGPT was the fastest growing web application of all time. So not a shocker to see it there, nor the ubiquitous of, Microsoft Office users with the integration of Copilot. I think there's gonna be a lot of eyes open though when we look at, Amazon Q and some of the other tools that are available there.
Sounds good. Let's get back then, and yeah, let's go on video and get to our first panel question. How would you describe the current state of AI adoption? OJ, why don't you start us off there?
Yeah, thanks, Neil. I mean, I think adoption is doing a lot of heavy lifting. There's a McKinsey article from earlier in the year. It said 78% of polled firms used AI, 72% use generative AI, and I think use is interesting. There was a report that came out yesterday from Microsoft that said 24% of firms said they have adopted AI, with 12% saying it was one of their goals. And I think this is the gap that we continue to see. Whether you like it or not, AI and really generative AI is being integrated more and more into what people are doing, into the tools that you already have, like be it like we saw Copilot before, or just even having people at your company using ChatGPT, maybe by your discretion or not, just leveraging the tool. However, what I fail to see, when I'm talking to businesses and peers, right, in the operational space, is that widespread adoption from a kind of organizational level tends to still be lacking. I mean, I think everyone wants to say it's a priority and they're touching the tools and trying them out, but to have an actual overarching plan is still continuing to grow. I mean, I think that, what did I say, 24% might be accurate. And it's the big difference between, are you kind of acknowledging the technology is there, or, are you looking at being kind of a frontier side of it and really embracing it? And that's where I think that gap is a huge jump between adoption and usage.
Yeah, good
Yeah.
point. Bob, your perspective.
Yeah, I certainly agree with OJ's last point, and as evidenced in the poll, ChatGPT, Microsoft Copilot, some of the things for individuals, or maybe their companies are providing them those tools, but easier to deploy than other, enterprise class, corporate, AI solutions. But things are moving lightning fast. If you compare AI to other technological disruptions and breakthroughs of recent years, if you use a smartphone for an example, the infrastructure, application availability, and user habits had to evolve gradually. And with AI, the infrastructure is there today between what the public clouds have built out, and also the availability of AI chips. And there's not a huge learning curve for users or a required change in habits. In fact, it's often taking tasks that were more complex previously and making them easier.
Very, very well spoken. Let's move on to our second question. What are key considerations when integrating AI into an existing business strategy? Bob, why don't you start us off on this one?
Sure, thanks, Neil. I think a lot of companies just kind of struggle with the where do I start? And I think it's important to determine what business cases you have that you're trying to address. And then also there's the internal versus external decision. I mean, there's certainly risks to consider across the board, but especially with having something external, public or customer facing. I mean, if anyone has ever gotten caught in a customer service chatbot loop without a way to reach resolution of an issue or exit out of it, it can be extremely frustrating. And things like that can cause reputational damage.
Agree. OJ, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think the key thing that's difficult, and agree with what you're saying, Bob, is that it's a fundamental shift to the way people work, and it's understanding like what are those processes. Like truly, it begins not with AI at all to a certain extent. It's can you map out what your people are doing, right? Like, what are the steps they take? What are the manual steps? What does it look like? Because it's almost, it's tricky. It's a double-edged sword. Because on one hand, I'll tell you with a very straight face that you can leverage AI in almost any workflow that you have, right? There is some point of what you're doing that you could have started specifically with generative AI to make it easier, make it faster, et cetera, et cetera. But to that point, you also have to be, mindful of what tool you're using. Like, it has to be fit for purpose and for the job. And then it's not necessarily one size fits all. Maybe, you don't want to have an AI assistant selling certain things that isn't like kind of roped in a right way, that's not going to give discounts out or something else. Or you're doing research, right? We're a accounting firm. Like, while we use generative AI broadly, it doesn't mean it's the exact same tool that we use to provide, research if I'm looking up a tax question versus writing an email to a customer. So it's something that I think people are trying to figure out. Where do I, not where, how do I start leveraging it in everything that I do? And then when I get there, what are the risks associated with it? And what are the tools that are going to mitigate that make it make sense? So it's such a fundamental shift. I think at first it's just getting everybody on board, and then it gets to really narrowing down kind of like, what is your specific plan and what does that look like? It's turning on a lot of light bulbs for a lot of people, which is never easy, at the end of the day. A lot of change management.
That is for sure.